Do your feelings of disgust cause your OCD contamination? You're not alone. We're going to talk all about it. Stay tuned. That's what's up next. Hi, my name is Natasha Daniels. I'm a therapist and I make videos for people with anxiety or OCD. And I make new videos every Thursday, so don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified because they do come out every Thursday. I want to talk about contamination OCD and in particular about disgust OCD themes, because often you can have contamination OCD where things get contaminated. You can't touch things. And if things touch other things, you can't touch that thing. And it spreads like wildfire. And often people who are not educated about OCD or are not really a specialist in OCD, or maybe your family, will say, what are you afraid of? Or they'll assume it's about germs, because when we think of the stereotype of OCD and not being able to touch things or opening things with your elbows or overwashing your hands, a lot of times we think, oh, it's just germs. And even for people who understand OCD, they might feel like you have to have a core fear. What are you afraid is going to happen if you touch that thing? And that can drive you crazy if you're like, it's not a fear, it's a feeling. It is a fear of a feeling, and we'll talk about that in a second. But disgust OCD shows up in a bit of a different way. The overwhelming feeling of disgust is hard to handle when you have that theme. And so a lot of times things become contaminated. So you might have an intrusive thought that something is on that object, whether it's a bodily fluid that makes you feel really gross. That's a really common one. A bodily fluid could be anything. It could be something from your nose, something from your private parts, anything that you feel like, ew, I don't want to touch that, or I don't want other people to touch that. It's disgusting. So a lot of times the word disgust or gross or nasty, those are the feelings that pop up around this theme. And so you're not afraid of touching the doorknob or touching or being near something that's making you feel overwhelmingly disgusted. Your fear is that you may not be able to handle the overwhelming feeling of discomfort, of the feeling of disgust. So there is kind of a core fear there. The fear is that you won't be able to tolerate the discomfort. And you might say, Natasha, I can't tolerate it. It's really bad. I totally understand that. I've worked with tons of people who have had disgust-themed OCD, and it's actually in my own home with my daughter. That's one of her themes, is around disgust, and things make her disgusted. The thing that you want to remember, though, is that all of OCD is OCD, and it can show up in lots of different flavors and disguises. But honestly, how you're going to approach OCD, regardless of theme, is going to be the same. And so OCD wants you to do something. OCD is bossy, and it's telling you to do or avoid things related to your intrusive thought or feeling. And the more you do what OCD wants you to do or avoid, the bigger OCD grows. That part is not rocket science. And so how you work through that, OCD lies to you and says, you can't handle that feeling. It just feels so gross. And so you just need to avoid the things that give you that feeling. So I can't touch the doorknob. And then, oh, my backpack hit the doorknob on the way out. I can't touch my backpack. And now my hands touch my backpack. I got to wash my hands. And my sink now is contaminated. And so it on and on and on and on it goes. And so you can't approach OCD in a rational way. And that's what OCD will convince you that you can do. OCD will say, it's gross, just ignore it. Don't touch it, avoid it. Use a tissue, use your elbows. That touch that, avoid that. That touch that, avoid that. And you have this long list of things that you have to avoid because it disgusts you and it makes you feel gross. Before you know it, similar to any other contamination OCD theme, your world gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and everything is contaminated, and everything you touch is a problem. Because if you think that you can play by OCD's rules and say, I'm just going to avoid the things that are disgusting or wash my hands after I touch anything disgusting so I don't spread it, you're always going to have more and more, because OCD will add more to your list and your world will get smaller. You can't beat OCD by following OCD. That's so hard, because really the way to crush OCD is to do really difficult things. is to build your OCD muscles one small step at a time, and to learn how to sit with that discomfort, to sit a little bit with that grossness. And I know that is so, so hard. I actually did make a video on how to try to crush contamination OCD. And regardless of what your core fear or feeling is, the way to crush contamination OCD is the same. And so I'm going to link that video up here because it's a very in-depth video on systematically going through and crushing contamination OCD. I just wanted to make a special video as a shout out and a validation to those of you that have discussed triggers around contamination OCD, to say you're not going crazy. I know people might be driving you crazy, being like, what's your fear? What are you afraid of? And you're like, nothing, I'm not afraid of anything. You're afraid of the discomfort that the feeling will bring. And I get that. And I get that. And I get that it's annoying when people don't understand that. But the way that you're going to tackle contamination OCD is going to be very similar, doing exposures. And a lot of times it's learning how to sit with the overwhelming feeling of grossness. My daughter has some themes around disgust OCD, and one of them is hair. Hair really triggers her. And the other day, this might have been this morning actually, I have like lost sense of time. She was using my sink, and I have a lot of hair. And so when I'm taking a shower and I'm like doing my gel and I'm rinsing my hair gets in my sink. And she wanted me to clean it out. She was trying to brush her teeth, and she's like, oh, this is so gross. I just can't handle it. And part of my work with her is, you can remove it if you want to remove it. You can avoid it if you want to avoid it. If you want to go to another sink, that's your deal. But I'm not going to remove it for you, because really learning how to sit with that discomfort and brushing your teeth anyway is how you get through disgust OCD. And I know that is so hard. And you have to do it in small steps some of the time. Sometimes you can do it in big steps. But she chose to continue to use my sink, and because we've been working on this for a long time, and she learned to just get through it, brush her teeth, get through it, and move on. So what small steps can you do? And it might be closing your eyes and imagining the thing that triggers your disgust. That can be really hard. And that might be a huge, big step for you to start with, is slowly learning how to desensitize yourself from the emotion of disgust. One small step at a time. Not avoiding life and people and objects and things because OCD is telling you it's disgusting. Because if you do, your world will get smaller and smaller and smaller. Check out this other video though to help walk you through it. I hope that this was helpful for those of you that have disgust-based contamination OCD. Don't forget to find the sparkle in everything you do. I do have in-depth support. I have courses. I have a kids and teens course on how to crush OCD. You can check that out at atparentingsurvivalschool.com, and I'll see you again next Thursday. Take care.